When we strip away the noise, the begging, the chasing, the endless texts, and the exhausting games, we find something profound: simplicity. We find the courage to be honest, the strength to be vulnerable, and the power to stand firm in our own worth. Life is not a competition for attention or approval. It is an invitation to show up as we are, fully and unapologetically. Think about it. Every time you chase after someone or beg for their affection, what are you telling yourself? You're whispering, "I am not enough as I am." But that whisper is a lie. You are enough right here, right now. The need to beg or chase dissolves when you start to see yourself clearly. Self-worth doesn't scream or demand attention. It simply exists quietly, undeniably. Setting boundaries is one of the most courageous acts we can engage in. It's not about pushing people away or creating walls that separate us from the world. Rather, it's about protecting our energy, our time, and our sense of self. It's about choosing to prioritize ourselves in a world that often asks us to ignore our own needs in favor of others. And the courage to set those boundaries does not come easily, because for many of us, it requires us to step into discomfort and face the fear of disappointing others. We live in a society that celebrates endless productivity, availability, and giving. There's a quiet, pervasive expectation that we should be constantly available, whether it's to respond to an email, answer a phone call, or attend to someone else's emotional needs. This pressure to always be on, always be giving, often leaves us exhausted, disconnected, and resentful. And yet, in the face of all this expectation, we sometimes find it incredibly hard to say no. The courage to set boundaries begins with understanding that we are not responsible for managing the feelings of others. This is a critical realization. It is not selfish to prioritize your own well-being. In fact, it is the most generous thing you can do for the people around you. When we are depleted, when we are stretched too thin, we cannot give from a place of abundance. We cannot show up as our best selves if we are constantly giving and never replenishing. Boundaries are not about creating distance. They are about creating the space necessary for you to show up as your truest, most authentic self. The process of setting boundaries also requires us to be honest. Honest with ourselves and honest with others. It involves recognizing our limitations, acknowledging when we have nothing left to give, and expressing that in a clear, compassionate way. Often this means facing the discomfort of potential conflict or the fear of letting people down. It's vulnerable. It requires us to admit that we cannot do everything, that we cannot be everything to everyone, and that's okay. In fact, it's essential for our well-being. When we have the courage to set boundaries, we're not only protecting our own well-being, but also honoring the relationships that matter most. Healthy boundaries foster respect. They establish an understanding that we value ourselves enough to say, this is what I can offer, and this is what I can't. This creates a sense of trust and clarity, which is essential for any relationship to thrive. Boundaries are not about rigidity. They are not about shutting people out or avoiding connection. Instead, they are about being clear and intentional with how we give and receive. Setting boundaries is a form of self-respect, and it allows us to engage in relationships that are meaningful and balanced. It's about creating space for others to show up for us just as we show up for them. But even more than that, setting boundaries is an act of self-love. It's an expression of how much we value ourselves, how much we are willing to honor our own needs. Boundaries are a declaration that we are worthy of love, respect, and care, both from others and from ourselves. It's an acknowledgement that we are not here to serve everyone else's needs at the expense of our own health and happiness. By setting boundaries, we send a message to the world that we deserve to be treated with kindness, dignity, and respect, just as we offer that to others. It's important to note that setting boundaries is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice, one that requires us to constantly check in with ourselves and adjust as needed. It is about developing the awareness to notice when we're overextending ourselves or when we're feeling drained. And then it's about taking action, whether that's saying no, taking a step back, or asking for support. The courage to set boundaries is something we cultivate over time through trial and error and through learning to trust ourselves and our intuition. So let us embrace the courage to set boundaries. Let us honor our own needs and well-being, knowing that by doing so, we create the space for richer, more fulfilling relationships and a deeper sense of peace. It's a journey that requires vulnerability, honesty, and deep self-awareness, but it is one that leads to a life lived more fully, more authentically, and with far more joy. End of chapter 3. There is a quiet yet powerful truth that many of us struggle to embrace. The pursuit of authenticity is infinitely more important than the craving for approval. From the very beginning, we are socialized to seek validation, to measure our worth through the eyes of others. We seek approval in our careers, in our relationships, and in every aspect of our lives. We measure our success by the praise we receive, by the recognition we garner, and by the way others perceive us. Yet at the core of this pursuit lies a deep, often unspoken emptiness. Because the truth is, when we are focused on gaining approval, we lose sight of the one thing that truly matters: our own sense of self. Authenticity is about embracing the fullness of who we are without apology or hesitation. It is about standing firm in our values, our beliefs, and our uniqueness, even when the world around us is encouraging us to conform. It is about owning our story, owning our imperfections, and choosing to show up as we truly are, without fear of judgment or rejection. When we are authentic, we stop asking for permission to be ourselves, and we begin to live in alignment with our true nature. We understand that we are enough, just as we are, without needing anyone else's validation. Approval, on the other hand, is a fleeting thing. It is conditional. It is based on meeting others' expectations or fitting into a prescribed mold. It is a form of external validation that tells us we are worthy only if we meet certain criteria. But the problem with seeking approval is that it leads to a life of constant striving. It forces us to play roles, to wear masks, and to behave in ways that are not aligned with our true selves. The more we seek approval, the more we lose touch with who we are, because we are always bending and shaping ourselves to fit someone else's idea of who we should be. This creates an internal disconnect, a sense of dissonance between who we are on the inside and how we present ourselves on the outside. Living authentically, however, is not about being perfect. It is not about always getting it right or never making mistakes. On the contrary, authenticity thrives in imperfection. It is the courage to show up in our full humanity, with all of our flaws, fears, and vulnerabilities. It is about understanding that we don't need to be flawless to be worthy of love, connection, and success. Authenticity is about being real, being raw, and allowing ourselves to be seen in our wholeness without the need to hide parts of ourselves for fear of judgment. The beauty of authenticity is that it fosters true connection. When we stop seeking approval from others, we start forming relationships that are based on real, meaningful interactions. We no longer need to pretend to be someone we're not in order to fit in. Instead, we attract people who appreciate us for who we truly are, who see us, hear us, and accept us without conditions. This kind of connection is powerful because it is grounded in mutual respect and vulnerability. When we choose authenticity over approval, we invite others to do the same. We create space for honest conversations, for deeper relationships, and for the kind of intimacy that can only exist when we stop pretending and start being real. It's important to note that choosing authenticity does not mean rejecting the opinions or feedback of others. It does not mean we ignore the people who care about us or the guidance of those who have wisdom to offer. Rather, it means we no longer base our worth on their approval. We understand that our value is intrinsic, not dependent on others' opinions. We can listen, learn, and grow without letting someone else's approval define us. The beauty of authenticity is that it allows us to be fully present in our own lives without the constant pressure to measure up to external expectations. We become the authority in our own lives, and we stop looking outside of ourselves for validation. Choosing authenticity over approval also requires immense courage. It requires us to confront the fear of rejection, the fear of not being liked, and the fear of being seen for who we truly are. It requires us to let go of the need for external validation and step into the unknown. But this is the kind of courage that leads to personal freedom. It is the courage to say, "This is me, and I am enough." It is the courage to stand tall in our truth, even when the world around us is pulling us in different directions. When we embrace authenticity over approval, we are no longer bound by the expectations of others. We are free to chart our own course, to create a life that is aligned with our values and passions, and to experience a sense of peace that comes from knowing we are living true to ourselves. This freedom is liberating because it allows us to show up in the world with confidence, knowing that we are enough, just as we are. Ultimately, the pursuit of authenticity is the pursuit of freedom. It is the freedom to be who we are without fear, without shame, and without the need to constantly prove ourselves to others. It is the freedom to live a life that is rich with meaning, connection, and joy. And while the world may try to convince us that approval is the key to success, the truth is that the only approval we need is our own. When we honor ourselves and our unique path, we create a life that is truly ours, one that is grounded in authenticity and fueled by the courage to be ourselves no matter what. Self-worth is the foundation upon which everything else in our lives is built. It is the deep-seated belief that we are deserving of love, respect, and all the good things that life has to offer. It is not something that is granted to us by others, nor is it something that can be earned through achievements or external validation. Self-worth comes from within, and it is the belief that regardless of our flaws or imperfections, we are inherently worthy simply because we exist. This belief is a powerful force that shapes our behavior, our relationships, and our capacity to navigate life's challenges. At the heart of self-worth lies the understanding that we are enough as we are. So often we are conditioned to think that we must prove our worth to others through our accomplishments, appearances, or the roles we play in society. But when we rely on external validation to define our value, we set ourselves up for a life of perpetual striving, a life in which our worth is contingent on the approval of others. This creates a cycle of dependency where our sense of self is constantly at the mercy of outside forces. In contrast, true self-worth is not contingent on anything external. It is an internal knowing that we are worthy simply because we exist, without needing to prove ourselves to anyone or anything. This sense of inherent worth is incredibly liberating. When we begin to recognize our own value, we no longer need to chase after approval, accolades, or external validation. We stop measuring our worth based on comparisons with others or the need to meet societal standards. Instead, we can begin to live authentically, grounded in our own beliefs and values. The power of self-worth lies in its ability to free us from the chains of external expectations, allowing us to live more fully and more truthfully. The journey to embracing our own worth can be a long and difficult one. It is often fraught with self-doubt, fear of rejection, and the lingering impact of past experiences where our worth was questioned or dismissed. But the beauty of self-worth is that it is not something that can be lost forever. It is always there, deep inside us, waiting to be rediscovered. Reclaiming our sense of self-worth requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to shed the layers of doubt and shame that have accumulated over time. It requires us to look within and confront the beliefs we have about ourselves, the limiting beliefs that tell us we are not enough, that we don't deserve love or success, that we must constantly prove ourselves. At times, this process may feel uncomfortable. We may face moments of vulnerability where we are forced to reckon with our imperfections and past mistakes. But it is through these moments of discomfort that our self-worth is strengthened. The more we allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, the good, the bad, and the messy, the more we affirm our worth. We learn that being imperfect does not make us unworthy. In fact, our imperfections are what make us human, and they are part of the very essence of our beauty and value. Embracing our imperfections is not a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of strength, because it takes immense courage to show up as our authentic selves, flaws and all. When we fully embrace our self-worth, we begin to shift the way we relate to others. We stop seeking validation from external sources, and instead we start showing up in our relationships as our authentic selves. We no longer need to play games or put on masks to gain approval. We are able to give and receive love freely because we know that we are deserving of it. Our relationships become deeper, more honest, and more fulfilling because we are no longer hiding behind the walls of insecurity and self-doubt. We are able to connect with others from a place of true vulnerability, and in doing so, we invite them to do the same. Self-worth also empowers us to set boundaries that honor our needs and our well-being. When we know our value, we no longer tolerate mistreatment or disrespect from others. We recognize that we are worthy of kindness, respect, and consideration, and we act accordingly. Setting boundaries becomes an act of self-love and self-respect because we understand that taking care of ourselves is not selfish. it is necessary. We give ourselves permission to say no when something does not align with our values, and we make choices that prioritize our emotional and mental health. This sense of self-respect extends to how we treat others as well. We are able to offer compassion, kindness, and empathy from a place of abundance because we have cultivated a deep sense of worth within ourselves. Another profound aspect of self-worth is its impact on our ability to take risks and face challenges. When we believe in our own value, we are more willing to step outside our comfort zones, to try new things, and to face the inevitable setbacks and failures that come with growth. We understand that our worth is not tied to our success or failure, but to our ability to persist in the face of adversity. This belief in our own value gives us the strength to keep going, even when things get tough. We know that we are capable of handling whatever life throws our way because we trust in our own resilience and our ability to learn from every experience. True self-worth also allows us to let go of the need to control everything. It frees us from the constant pressure to be perfect, to have everything figured out, or to always be in control. We come to understand that it is okay to make mistakes, to be uncertain, and to take imperfect action. We no longer see mistakes as reflections of our worth, but as opportunities for growth and learning. This shift in perspective allows us to approach life with more openness and curiosity, knowing that our worth remains intact, regardless of the outcome. Ultimately, the power of self-worth is transformative. When we embrace our own value, we open ourselves up to a life of greater authenticity, connection, and fulfillment. We begin to live in alignment with our true selves, and we stop seeking approval from others to validate our existence. We stand tall in the knowledge that we are worthy, just as we are, and that our worth is not dependent on anything outside of ourselves. We have the power to shape our lives from a place of deep self-respect and love, and in doing so, we become a source of strength and inspiration for others. When we fully embody our self-worth, we create a ripple effect that can transform not only our own lives, but the lives of those around us. The foundation of any healthy relationship, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, begins with a deep, unwavering sense of self-awareness and self-respect. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and similarly, you cannot offer genuine love, empathy, or connection if you are not fully grounded in who you are. Too often, we are told to look outside ourselves for fulfillment, for validation, and for approval. We are led to believe that the key to happiness and connection lies in the actions or affections of others. But this belief is flawed. Healthy relationships begin with a deep understanding and acceptance of ourselves. Only when we have nurtured our own sense of self-worth can we truly show up for others in a way that is compassionate, authentic, and sustainable. When we speak of self-awareness, we are talking about more than just knowing your likes or dislikes, your passions, or your career goals. True self-awareness is the ability to sit with yourself and recognize the deep, often hidden layers of your emotional landscape. It is understanding your triggers, your fears, and the patterns that have shaped your behavior and choices over the years. It is the ongoing lifelong practice of checking in with yourself, of noticing when your actions, thoughts, or responses are coming from a place of fear, shame, or insecurity, and when they are coming from a place of love, confidence, and wisdom. This kind of self-awareness allows you to better understand how you move through the world and how you show up in your relationships. It provides clarity on what you need, what you can give, and where your boundaries should be. Without self-awareness, we risk becoming disconnected from our true selves, and that disconnection inevitably affects every relationship we try to foster. Self-respect goes hand in hand with self-awarenesses. It is the recognition that you are worthy of love, care, and respect simply because you exist, not because of anything you do, but because of who you are. It means standing firm in your beliefs, in your values, and in your worth, even when others try to push you off course, or when circumstances challenge your sense of self. Self-respect is the courage to say no when something feels off, to stand up for yourself when you are being treated unfairly, and to prioritize your well-being without feeling guilty. It is the belief that you deserve to be treated with kindness, honesty, and compassion, and that your needs and desires are just as important as anyone else's. This respect for yourself becomes the standard by which you allow others to treat you. When you have self-respect, you don't settle for less than what you truly deserve. You recognize that your worth is not tied to how others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself. Healthy relationships also require vulnerability, the willingness to show up as you truly are, without the armor of perfection or defensiveness. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as weakness, but it is in fact the most courageous thing we can do in any relationship. It is the willingness to be seen fully and authentically by another person. It is the willingness to risk being hurt or rejected for the sake of connection. But vulnerability can only exist when we have a strong sense of self-worth and trust in our ability to handle whatever arises. If we are not secure in who we are, we will approach relationships from a place of fear, guarding ourselves against potential hurt. Vulnerability is not about being completely open at all times, but about knowing when and where it's safe to share your truth. It is about cultivating deep trust in yourself, so that you can trust others to meet you where you are. In healthy relationships, vulnerability fosters empathy and understanding, paving the way for deeper emotional intimacy and connection. Boundaries are another key element of healthy relationships. When we have a strong sense of self, we are better equipped to establish and maintain boundaries that protect our emotional well-being. Boundaries are not walls that keep others out. Rather, they are lines that ensure we are treated with the respect and dignity we deserve. Setting boundaries requires the courage to say no when necessary, to stand firm when something doesn't feel right, and to express our needs openly. It is an act of self-love and self-respect. And when we set clear boundaries, we communicate to others that we value ourselves and that we are willing to protect our peace. Boundaries also create a space for others to show up as their authentic selves without fear of judgment or rejection. They allow both individuals in a relationship to coexist in a way that honors their individuality while also fostering closeness and intimacy. Self-worth and self-love are the bedrock of every relationship, and these qualities must begin within ourselves before they can be fully extended to others. The more we invest in our own growth, healing, and self-discovery, the more we can offer those we love. When we practice self-compassion, we can offer the same compassion to others. When we honor ourselves, we can honor others. When we love ourselves, we can love others with depth and authenticity. Healthy relationships are not about perfection. They are about showing up as we are, with all of our flaws, our beauty, and our humanity. It is through this process of self-awareness, self-respect, vulnerability, and trust that we create relationships that are not only healthy, but also rich with connection, joy, and fulfillment. The need to control is an illusion we create to protect ourselves from vulnerability. We try to control situations, people, and outcomes in our lives as a way to feel safe, secure, and in charge. But control, while seemingly a solution to chaos, is an illusion. It is a form of armor that we wear to shield ourselves from the uncertainties and discomforts of life. Yet this armor often prevents us from experiencing the fullness of our existence. We mistake control for safety, but in reality it is often the very thing that keeps us from growing, connecting, and living authentically. Letting go of control does not mean abandoning responsibility or surrendering to fate. It is not about giving up or becoming passive. Rather, it is about embracing the reality that we cannot dictate every outcome, manipulate every circumstance, or manage every emotion. Life will unfold as it will, and while we can influence our choices, we are not in full control of every event. Letting go of control is about relinquishing the false narrative that we can control everything around us, and instead learning to trust the process of life itself. It is about accepting that uncertainty is a part of the human experience, and that it is through uncertainty that we discover our resilience, creativity, and capacity to thrive. When we let go of control, we open ourselves up to possibility. We no longer spend our energy obsessing over every detail, trying to predict the future or avoiding discomfort at all costs. We make space for spontaneity, for life to surprise us, for new opportunities to emerge. This shift is not always easy because it requires us to confront our fears, our fear of the unknown, our fear of failure, and our fear of being vulnerable. But by confronting these fears and choosing to let go, we free ourselves from the constant tension of trying to control everything. In letting go of control, we make room for life to flow with more ease, for joy to emerge unexpectedly, and for deep connections to be formed without the pressure of perfection. Letting go of control also means releasing the unrealistic expectations we place on ourselves and others. So often, we hold ourselves to unattainable standards, believing that if we could just get it right or do it perfectly, everything would fall into place. But perfection is a myth. It is a construct that keeps us trapped in a cycle of striving and never feeling like we are enough. By letting go of perfectionism and embracing our imperfections, we allow ourselves to be human. We allow ourselves to be flawed, to make mistakes, and to learn from them. We let go of the need to prove ourselves, and instead we make space for growth, vulnerability, and self-compassion. In relationships, letting go of control means allowing others to be who they are without imposing our expectations or trying to shape them into someone else. It means recognizing that we cannot change, fix, or save others, no matter how much we might want to. It means accepting people as they are, with all of their strengths and shortcomings, without trying to change them or force them into our ideal version of them. This is a powerful act of love because it allows others to show up authentically without fear of judgment or rejection. And when we let go of control in our relationships, we cultivate trust, intimacy, and genuine connection. We make space for people to be their true selves, and in turn, they give us permission to do the same. Letting go of control also invites us to embrace the mystery of life. We cannot predict the future, we cannot plan every detail, and we cannot always have things go according to our wishes. But it is in this unpredictability that we find the richness of existence. Life is full of twists and turns, of surprises, and of moments of grace. It is in the unknown that we are invited to surrender, to trust, to let go and to embrace the unfolding. We are often so focused on what we think should happen that we miss the beauty of what is happening in the present moment. Letting go of control is about trusting that the universe, life, or whatever you believe in has its own rhythm. And if we can surrender to that rhythm, we find ourselves in alignment with something far greater than our need to control. Ultimately, letting go of control is an act of deep trust. Trust in ourselves, trust in others, and trust in the process of life itself. It is about releasing the tight grip we have on the world and instead allowing ourselves to flow with the current of life. We no longer feel the need to control every moment because we trust that whatever comes our way, we are capable of handling it. We are enough as we are. And we trust that life will unfold as it should. And this trust gives us the freedom to live fully, to be present in each moment, and to embrace whatever comes our way with open arms. Letting go of control is not about giving up. It is about stepping into our own power. It is about living with authenticity, vulnerability, and grace. It is about being free. And in that freedom, we discover our truest selves. The games, the constant push and pull, the tactics to gain the upper hand, they come from a place of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of losing, fear of not being enough. But fear is not your master. Fear does not get to dictate how you show up in the world. Letting go of the games is not weakness, it is courage. It is choosing to live from a place of truth rather than pretense. So what should you do? Stand in your truth. Respect yourself enough to know that you don't need to beg for what's already meant for you. Chase your dreams, not people. Send messages that reflect your heart, not your fear. And let go of the games that drain your energy and erode your self-worth. This is not about arrogance or indifference. It's about clarity and courage. It's about showing up as your full, flawed, magnificent self and trusting that the right people and opportunities will meet you there. Because when you stop begging, chasing, texting excessively, and playing games, you create space for something far more beautiful, a life that honors your deepest truths and connections that nourish your soul.